Well, howdy folks. Welcome to Mercenary Thoughts from the Inner Sphere, episode 86. And today we're going to be talking about the Schrek PPC Carrier. 80 tons of, well, something I just love to play with. Now, the Schrek AP, or the PPC Carrier, 80 tons is a 350, doesn't have jump jets or anything. Usually you're not going to see jump jets on anything like that. Okay, it has a 20 heat sinks for dissipation of 30 heat. It also has a fusion reactor. It carries around only 3 PPCs, hence the name PPC Carrier. Its whole purpose is just to sit back and unleash death from long range. It's a fire support tank. That's it. Should we move on? Or, okay, let's just talk about it a little bit more. Now, the one lovely thing about this thing is that for less than 940 points, you can bring in something that has 3 PPCs that does up to 30 points of damage out to 18 hexes or 18 inches, and that's not so bad. You know, you're looking at some of these mechs running around the board that can't even do that for the same amount of points. So, hey, what's not to like about this? And there's many times I take this thing out, I'll throw it into a lance, and if you're playing any type of games where you're doing combined arms and you're able to spend some time where you dig in, put these things hull down, which means that all you can see is the turret. So the only thing you can hit is the turret, and then you start shooting at it, and most of the time everything's going into the dirt. And so you basically have something that is just hard to dig out. You have to literally go up next to it or get behind it or something where it no longer has the benefit of being in a haul down to try to kill this thing. And if you ever played against a vehicle, you know, the turrets are hard to hit to begin with, so most of the damage usually goes on the hull, and if it's dug in and something that shoots as far as it is, you get 4 of these in a lance, and you put them on a hill someplace where they got a good field of fire, they can pretty much control a board locally. Because for less than a little over 3,700 points, you can dish out 12 PP shots. That's 120 points possible of damage from a lance on something. And if you connect on even a, say, 2 or 3 of those connect on a, say, a light mech, that mech isn't around very long, because most light mechs, you do 10 points of damage, you're already starting to go internal. You get a couple of these, it's not going to be a good story for that. You get a medium mech that gets hit with, let's say, 4 of these shots a turn, and a couple turns that medium mech is gone. You take a heavy mech or even a medium mech that is like a 4 or 6 mover, and it gets hit by these things, it's not long for the world. You get an assault mech, you take an Atlas that's moving like a 3-5 that has hardly any modifiers. You're lucky if it has 1 modifier. A platoon of these in a dug-in position will end it. An Atlas will be gone in 2, maybe 3 turns. Let that sink in. That is how powerful a Schrek PPC Carrier is. So, I'm not sure why a lot of people don't like playing with vehicles, but you know, you look at something like this on paper, even in games, it's pretty deadly. And it's like all the PPC carriers that I have, all the ones that I have painted up, are made out of lead. It's been since what, 92, 93, since the last time back when Ralph Partha was making everything out of lead before they went to pewter, was federal government changed everything, said it had to be made out of pewter. That tells you how long I've been playing with these things, and I like them. If it wasn't for the fact that I really don't need 8 of them, I have 6. You know, I usually in a platoon of 4, I might put 3 of them, 3 Schreks, and then a bodyguard tank of some type with it that has some decent short range stuff that will intercept or cause anything that tries to get in really close to have some problems. So it's like 3 of these and a bodyguard. That's typically how I run them. So I've got 2 lances worth of stuff, like a bulldog or something of that nature. Works pretty decently. Now, how do you usually use these things? Like I said, I like to put them in the back someplace. Either if you got a formation and you have the points where you can run these, you have a few of them. Yeah, they work really good going behind all the other mechs. Now, like I said, one of the biggest downfalls of this vehicle is it only has 112 points of armor. And with 112 points of armor, it doesn't take very long to go through the front slope of this thing with damage. You're talking an AC-20 and maybe a medium laser, and you're already inside. So, or a couple AC-10s, or a couple PPCs in return, or something, or a couple LRM-20 shots, and you get hit with a couple LRM-20s, and the front armor on this thing is gone. And then you're looking at pretty much getting tore up. So that's why it's always best to kind of shepherd these things, because you got some points into something that can do out a lot of damage. And so you like I said earlier, it's like I always like to have some type of bodyguard that's a close mech or vehicle or mech or something that can intercept something coming up that is going to possibly get in close, because that's the one thing that is a downfall of this, is that you have the minimum range. If you get within 2 right next to a PPC carrier, it's going to have medium minimum to hit. So if there's only, well, if you got a lance of these things and somebody tries to get up close, the other ones that are in support can help out and not worry about the minimum ranges, and they might actually be within the sweet spot of short range and tear the heck out of somebody. But if it's a single one and it's by itself and doesn't have any support, that's how you take care of these things, is that you get right up in its face, right next to it, and unload with a whole bunch of firepower into it. And if you have, it's like the detriment of every single vehicle is to hit it with an inferno round. They don't or a flamer or something. They don't handle that very well. As a matter of fact, they just get toasted. So that's one thing you can look at for taking these things out. Now, there are some variants out there that I have seen. They talk about cannibalizing the PPCs, because a PPC is kind of an expensive weapon system to put on a vehicle. So a lot of times you'll see, like in Innisphere, somebody will pull them off and be replaced with autocannons. You can turn around. I've seen one variant that will replace 2 of the PPCs, leave the PPC if you have the fusion engine on it, so you still have a PPC, and then taking that extra 20 tons of heat sinks and 2 PPCs and replace it with 2 AC-10s. So you're sitting there with something that's about the same, but you now have ammo on board. But you have 2 AC-10s with, I think, 40 points or 40 shots, or 4 tons of ammo with it, and then it has even more armor, so everything goes back into armor. So then you're not worrying too much about somebody shooting at you at close range. So then you have those auto cannons to do it because they don't have a minimum range. Let's see. I've seen another one at the convention where they had a Schrek doing the same thing, left one PPC on, and then they turn around and put some AC5s on. I think it has like 3 AC5s, and then a bunch of ammo, and then some machine guns or something of that nature. I'm not exactly sure how it was, but I played with it once where it was a Schrek. They call it a Schrek. Might have been a book one. I'm not sure. I've never played with the variant other than at a convention. So that's about the extent of my knowledge with that one. And then, what else? There was another one I can't remember off the top of my head. But typically, the two that I've ever seen is one that replaces 2 of the PPCs with 2 AC-10s, and then just running a standard one. So I could see the AC-10 version being kind of a nice one to run around with. You know, you're talking about, like I said, not worrying about the minimum ranges. And a lot of times, if we're playing some really bigger games and we're doing conventional arms, I don't mind. There's been on quite a few occasions where I would do some surround them in a position, and then put some infantry support around them, and some hovercraft and stuff like that, where you have some quick reaction force. So if someone's coming up, you are running around with the hovercraft at really high speeds, with the infantry out front of the Schrek PPC Carrier. So you're sitting on a hilltop someplace and you're just laying down fire, and if the enemy tries to come in, they have the infantry to swarm them, lay in fire on them, and then you have the fast moving hovercraft that will get in behind them or hitting them in the flanks. So it can be a buzzsaw pretty much anytime you face anybody that knows what they're doing with vehicles. Now, if you're on the attack, a lot of times I'll say typically if I'm running Schreks, it's going to be a fairly large battle, and I'm going to have some mediums and heavies and some assaults out front. And these guys are usually probably 10, 12 inches or hexes behind the back units, so you're not really worried too much about them attracting too much attention. And if you ever played the game, you end up with a scrum, like a rugby scrum, if anybody knows about rugby, where everybody just gloms onto each other. And typically towards about the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th turn, most games end up that way, where especially in the 30-25 era, between 30 up to 30-50, where you don't have a lot of the good pilots, good tech, and everybody just kind of get into this jockeying for punching and kicking and shooting at point blank range. And then you have these guys behind him just tearing things up, and they have a hard to get to them. They either have to have their own flankers, and by that time the flankers are also engaged and having a hard time, because if they turn around and go after your rear units, they're exposing their rear armor, and most players don't want to do that. So it's you kind of fix a opponent in place, and these guys will start tearing things up. So it's kind of a win-win when it comes to that. So a lot of people don't realize that if you're playing the game, you want to get out there and fix your opponent into place, get them into where you want to be, and then you have your follow-on forces are then the ones that can maneuver around and get around the flanks. And if you're the first one to do that, then that forces the enemy try to react to you, and then they turn around and they can't turn around. So if they do turn around, they're getting shot in the back. We had one game where we what was it, maybe it was an enforcer. I think it was an enforcer. guy turned around and he wasn't really paying attention, and it was at one of the conventions. He turned around and had a couple of these Schreks, and he turns around and I put, I think, might have been four. Yeah, I think it was 4 shots. Hit him in the back, like right, left, and 2 in the center torso, and just cored out this medium mech. Just because he wasn't paying attention. I think he was probably a young guy who had much experience, and it was just like the death trap. It's like, yeah, congratulations, you turned around. It's like, I'm going to pretty much ignore. I'm going after these other guys because I'm trying to maneuver around the side, and he just exposed his entire back to some vehicles as I was marching down the table with them. So that one of the things you can do with a vehicle is that a lot of times people mistake how powerful a vehicle can be in the game. And there's other people that will say, yeah, the vehicles are overpowered. You know, it's like, well, they have their they have their strength, they have their weaknesses. Because a vehicle like these Schreks can be fairly cheap to put into the game, but they have the weaknesses sometimes. Like in this case, they have weak armor, and they are susceptible to other things that can kill them. So you just have to look through and figure out what it is sometimes. All right. Hopefully you guys have some interesting stories you might want to throw in about the Schrek PPC carriers. I love them. There are times I think I want a couple more of them, just so I can have a couple platoons or a couple lances. Heck, there's even times I dream about getting another 6 and just think about, hey, I have a whole company of just Schreks. Fire support company. Yeah, I think let that one sink in. But you know, with some other heavy vehicles, it kind of works its way out. All right, rambled on enough in this one. All right, hope you guys have a good one, and we will talk with you later.